Hello and welcome to the special support section of Melee's Turnwheel. I'm your host, Melee Kirby, and today we will be looking at Milady, Zeiss, Elen, Niime, and Hugh from Fire Emblem: The Binding Blade. And it is significantly less hot in my apartment. I'm not recording this one immediately after the other one. I did take a couple of days off, mostly just because it was really hot and I wanted to stop for a while. But yeah, I'm back, and it'll still go up around the same time, so you guys won't notice a difference. In fact, I told on myself a little bit. Maybe should have just kept it quiet, but, doesn't matter, I guess. Okay, I'm actually really excited to talk about these characters because I was surprised at just how much I liked a lot of these guys. I think some of my favorite characters in the whole game are in this episode, so I think without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and start talking about. We'll start with Elen. Elen supports 5 characters. She supports Chad, Lou, Saul, Milady, and Zeiss. So I think ultimately, I'm not really going to break down most of her supports in detail, I don't think. Because I do like Elen, and I like a lot of these supports, but a lot of them are very similar and convey basically the same thing, which is that Elen is just a very, very sweet, nice, kind, caring person who wants to help people. That is her whole deal. She is a saint among people. Lou even refers to her as a saint, I think. He says, when you smile like that, you look like a saint. And all of her supports, the Chad support, the Lou support, the Saul support, they all kind of revolve around the same thing. The Saul support is pretty funny. It is mostly a comedy support where Saul is hitting on her and she just doesn't get it. She's just so naive that she doesn't understand what's happening. And she is just so innocent that he loses interest. And decides to just kind of like go talk to somebody else, which is pretty funny. I do have a little bit more to say about this one, but more so for Saul. So we're going to save that for his episode, later on. The Lou and Chad supports are both very similar. She hears both of their stories and just wants to help them. It just shows that she's a great person, those sorts of things. So the two that I want to focus on for Elen are the Milady support and the Zeiss support. The Zeiss support is it's not really that interesting, I wouldn't say. It does break out of that formula from the previous 3 in the sense that I guess you could tie both of these together from this angle, which is that Elen is kind of allowing herself to be more vulnerable to these people compared to the other characters. So, for example, in the Zeiss support, she approaches him with some of her fears and her anxieties. She's afraid of men, apparently. That doesn't show. That doesn't really come up in any of the other supports, even the Saul one. But I think that they have a nice enough relationship here where she can talk about it a little bit with him. It's cute. It ends on like a sort of romantic note. I mean, I don't want to read romance into everything, but it suggests to me that she is, she has some romantic interest in him, and vice versa, of course. The Milady support, though, is where things get interesting. I really like this support because it again, just like with Zeiss, this kind of shows a rare instance of Elen being more vulnerable. In this case, she has something on her mind, and Milady talks to her about it. She gets it off of her chest, which is that she feels guilty about joining up with Roy, with Guinevere, without even consulting Milady first. That's what's on her mind, and Milady basically says, don't worry about it. I'm glad that you did it. But I think, Elen kind of lets the crack show a little bit here, because in the A support, she says, I'm the cleric. I'm the one who's supposed to listen to you and relieve your stress. And, I mean, I think that just goes to show kind of how kind and caring of a person she is. She really feels like she's the one who has to be shouldering all the responsibilities. As the cleric, it's her job to relieve the others of their burdens, kind of like what she does with Lou and with Chad. But in this case, she's allowing somebody else to help her, which I think is a nice little bit of character development. So yeah, not a Ellen's a great example, actually, and we're going to see plenty of these later down the line, of a character who's very simple and one-dimensional, but that I still like anyway, because she's just she's very sweet. And we've seen plenty of those already, but I think this is the first time really in this game, and in any of the games with the supports, because I think in 4 and 5, most of the characters are one-dimensional because there's so little dialogue. But in this game, there's plenty of supports. Every character usually has at least 5 supports. And most of these don't really do much to, explore any amount of depth with her character. So I wouldn't say it's fantastic. I wouldn't say she's a fantastic character from that sense. I just think that she's sweet and nice, and I like her. I also like using her in the gameplay. So yeah, I would say that I'm a decent fan of Elen overall. Okay, next up we will do Milady. Milady supports 5 characters. She supports Zeiss, Lou, Trek, Elen, and Yoder. God, I can't wait to get to the Yoder one. I love Yoder. Alright, so the Elen one we've already talked about. From the Minerva... She is riffing on Minerva pretty hard, so I don't really blame myself for that mix-up. But from the Milady side of things, I would say that she's just very... she's a very straightforward person, and she's encouraging Elen to not mull things over, not to live in the past, because if she mulls too much in the past, then she's not going to be able to move forward into the future. Pretty simple stuff, but it's pretty good. The Lou support doesn't really do much. It's mostly for Lou, so I'm gonna skip over that one. I think Trek. You see, in the context of the Elen support, where she's very much, she has this mentality of you shouldn't let yourself fret over the small things. I think that she vibes with Trek from that perspective, and by the end of their support, his kind of antics of just being a laid-back dude cheer her up, and she says as much, and I think that's pretty cool. There's not really much else to it. She basically has no she has no role in the support for the most part, but I think the fact that she has kind of expressed herself as being someone who doesn't like to fret over small details, I think her and Trek are a match made in heaven in that sense. The Zeiss support is kind of what I wish the Bors and Gwendolyn support was, because these two are also siblings. And the idea here is that Milady is protecting Zeiss because he's young, he's inexperienced, he's not as good of a wyvern knight as she is, so she has to protect him. And Zeiss is all about getting stronger. He does something reckless in battle as a way to kind of get stronger so he can protect her as well. But she scolds him and says that he shouldn't be so reckless, and they get into a little bit of a falling out. And then in the A support, it turns out that he can take a little bit better care of himself than she was giving him credit for. So they were kind of both in the wrong. I say that, I feel like Zeiss was being kind of a little bitch in the B support, but I do think that maybe Milady wasn't giving him enough credit. It's simple, it's effective, it doesn't really, it's not like breaking new ground or reinventing the wheel or anything, but it's pretty good, I would say. It gets across the point that it's trying to. It helps flesh out these characters and their relationship with each other in a way that feels, well written and like it actually makes me care about these characters, which, again, I kind of wish that this is what the Bors and Wendy support had been about, because that support was all about Bors not feeling like Wendy was ready to be an armor knight and protecting her, and her trying to move out from under his shadow. There was no real resolution to that. I felt like they could have done more with that. I mean, to be fair, some of the criticisms they made of that support are still present here. There's not really much going on in terms of painting a bigger picture of their characters, I suppose. We don't really know. We don't really learn much about them in terms of their relationship, other than that they like each other and want to protect each other. So it's not an amazing support or anything, but it's just it's like the C+ version of the Bors and Wendy support, which is a D. It's fine. Okay, and then finally we have Milady and Yoder. And I don't want to talk too much about Yoder, because we're going to do a whole thing with Yoder when we get to him. But he just consistently brings the best out of these other characters. in the C and B supports, he's mostly just being like a very supportive guy and nice and making Milady feel better about herself. In the A support, he takes a very interesting approach, which is that he, Milady worries that she's forcing her wyvern to, she roped her wyvern Triffin into fighting this fight against her will. And Yoder says, well, in Bern, they train the wyverns to be extremely loyal to the Bern soldiers. So if you were trying to pit this thing against its fellow soldiers, if it truly didn't want to be here, it would just, go with its training and, turn against you and go back to Bern. But it's not doing that. So clearly it wants to be here, which I think, makes Milady feel significantly better. Again, nothing groundbreaking, but it's nice. It's a very nice support. I really like Yoder, and we're gonna see more of him later. And we're gonna see more of him in this episode, actually. But yeah, he's pretty good. And I'm forgetting this is about Milady. Milady, I would say, is actually a pretty boring character for the most part. I think that she certainly is a character who. She plays a very passive role in her Lu support and her Trek support. Her Elen support is very generic, and then the Yoder support, if anything, kind of makes her seem like a hypocrite because she's getting bogged down in a lot of very mundane and kind of, maybe not pointless, but like the same things that she's kind of getting on Ellen's case for worrying about. So I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure if I'm actually that big of a fan of Milady. I don't think she's bad by any means, but she certainly is a character in Fire Emblem The Binding Blade. The Zeiss support is alright, though. Okay, next up let's do Zeiss next, actually, since he's right here. Zeiss supports 5 characters: Milady, Corel, Shin, Elen, and Bartray. Bartray? Okay, so Zeiss Elen support, pretty standard stuff. He kind of implies that he has feelings for her at the end. But it's cool that he's just like kind of a cool laid back guy that he can be for Elen to come to. I think the Shin and Milady supports both kind of encapsulate his vibe as like he feels a fierce loyalty to the people he cares about, and obviously Milady is his sister, but even the Shin support, like Shin, he doesn't know Shin, but he like helps out Zeiss once and he feels a need to repay him. And so he's constantly trying to improve. He's always, he feels a little bit, I get the impression that he feels kind of out of his depth. Like he's maybe not as good of a soldier as he could be and he wants to improve. A little bit is headcanon, but again, he really strikes me as like, if Wendy was a good character, or at least if Wendy wasn't a terrible character, then she would be a lot like Zeiss, I think. He's kind of new to all this. And he has some talent, but he's not amazing, and he's acutely aware of that fact and trying to improve himself. And being able to, he wants to be able to watch out for others the same way that they watch out for him. And then the Bartray support is basically comedy. In fact, actually, no, this isn't like pure comedy. I would say it's mostly comedy. But what's cool about this is that Bartray really points out exactly what I just said, whereas, Zeiss is trying to get strong. He compliments Zeiss because he's already so strong, but then he says, oh, you're already so strong and you want to get stronger. That's the mark of a true man, and kind of like shows a lot of respect for him. But then the B and A support is kind of just Bartray going on an unhinged rant, and it has one of my favorite lines in any of the supports in this game, which is, from now on, think of me as your father and feel free to tell me anything. Is that clear, my son? And I just love Bartray. Bartray's a very fun character in this game. So yeah, that kind of drives the point home that I was talking about with him being, constantly wanting to improve and feeling like he's, Zeiss doesn't really get a whole lot to say and do here, unfortunately. I feel like they could have done a lot more with this. Again, story of pretty much every FE6 support is it's alright, but they could have done more with it. I think this is one of those ones where, they could have had Zeiss and Bartray maybe bro out over getting stronger because both of them want to improve themselves so much. I don't know, they could have done something interesting there, but instead they kind of take the most boring approach, I feel like. All right, and then the Corel support, Zeiss recognizes him as the Sword Saint. There's some interesting stuff in here for Corel, but for Zeiss, we basically only get some backstory about Gale. He refers to Gale as being his brother, and then he says, "Oh, well, he's not my real brother, but he's like a brother." And then he basically, Corel's like, "Why are you telling me all this?" And Zeiss is like, "Well, I was hoping that you could help me get past my hesitation." And Corel says, "Well, I can't do that. Only you can do that." Essentially, I can't do that for you. And Zeiss says, "Okay, well, that's a good point. I should get over my hesitation," which that's nice. I'm glad that he is able to get past his hesitation, whatever those hesitations are. I think this is the only support where he really particularly mentions fighting against Bern as a concern that he has. So I think that's maybe what he was talking about. Yeah, I don't know, unclear. Again, Zeiss is. I think I like him a little bit more than Milady. He's all right. But I think for the most part he's kind of he's not super interesting. Now, I did say at the beginning that I love all these characters and they're some of my favorite characters in the game. I probably should have been a little bit more specific because now we're going to start to get into two of my favorite characters in the whole game, which are Hugh and Niime. Let's start with Hugh. All right, we've actually read almost all of Hugh's supports already, and all of them in the same episode, because Chad, Lou, Ray, and Kath all have a support with Hugh, and they were all great. I remember saying in that episode that I love Hugh so much, and that we should have just made it a Hugh episode. But I think what I'm just going to do here is I'm going to kind of briefly run through those four supports and talk a little bit about how it makes me think about Hugh. And I think there's a consistent through line that you're going to see through all of these, and then one that actually Niime draws direct attention to. But we'll get to there. So in the Chad support, he gives Chad a hard time about borrowing money, and they kind of have a back and forth about that. But then he finds out what he wants it for, and he has a lot of sympathy for Chad, and basically says, well, he apologizes for making fun of Chad earlier in the support, and then the A support, this is one of my favorite lines in the entire game, where he makes Chad laugh. He tells a joke that makes Chad laugh, and Hugh he goes on a little tangent about how he says, "I've seen so many kids who have lost the ability to smile in this war. Grown-ups have a lot of issues, but come on, kids have to be laughing. Although it seems like the idiots starting wars don't realize that. Well, anyway, if there are kids who can still laugh, I suppose there's still hope for the world. I know it's been tough for you, but make sure to laugh once in a while, okay?" And then he ruffles Chad's hair, which is that. Those two lines are more characterization than anybody in this entire fucking game gets, and I love it. He's just such a nice guy who kind of hides that or tries to I don't think he's putting on a facade in the same way that Ray is necessarily, but I do think that he wants to be something that he's not, which is kind of a womanizing philanthropist, making money and fucking bitches and all that. But that's just not who he is. He's at his core, he is someone who appreciates the value in a child's laugh, which is just it's just cool, man. I just like Hugh. The Lou support is very similar, where Lou is just really nice to him, and Hugh, the whole support, if I'm remembering, I'm only skimming it right now, but Lou is just really nice to Hugh, and Hugh is like, you're being so nice to me. He's like, you're so much nicer to me than my grandma ever was. And then they just decide that they're going to be best friends forever. And it's so cool. And they're the best. The Ray support is both very this is one of the, maybe I'm overblowing this a little bit. I think it's because so many supports in this game are so bad, or at least very boring, that I'm really honing in on the good ones. But the Ray support is simultaneously both very characterful and very funny, which is such a rare combination in this game that it's might be my single favorite support in the entire game. I know I've said that about a couple of them, but I think I think I might actually mean this one. I think this is up there for me at the very least. If you need a refresher, basically Ray stole Hugh's spellbook like a while ago, before the events of the game even. They get into a big fight about it, and they're bickering with each other. They go back and forth, and eventually the ace support resolves with Ray giving Hugh a gem, and he's like, this gem is worth more than the spellbook, so just go and buy another one. And Hugh says, no, I don't want this. It's not about the money, it's about my pride. So you can keep the money, you can keep the spellbook even, but you need to apologize to me, and then I'll let you have it. And Ray doesn't fucking do it. He just walks away. And it's so good. It's such a good character moment for both of them. The fact that Hugh is willing to let him have the book, because again, he appreciates he appreciates the value of like childlike wonder, and he's willing to let him have the book, but he's also too stubborn to just let him have it. So he's like, you need to apologize to me first. I don't care about money. Again, letting the facade drop a little bit. He doesn't actually care about money as much as he seems to claim he does. And then it's a fantastic character moment for Ray, because he just doesn't do it. He just refuses. They're so good. I love both of them so much. The Hugh and Kath support is, I think I framed this a little bit poorly in the Kath episode, because I did describe it as a pure comedy support, I think, and it mostly is, but it does have a good character moment for Hugh, where they're talking, the C&B supports are them going back and forth, her trying to steal his money and shit, and eventually she kind of reveals that, like, hey, I am a noble thief, I steal from the rich and give to the poor, and I don't keep any of it for myself. And Hugh immediately is like, you can have half of my money. Just half of all the money I have, you can have it if you're going to give it to the poor and not keep any for yourself. And Kath says, no, I don't take handouts. Also, I already stole your money, and then runs away. And he realizes that indeed she has stolen all of his money, and, hilarity ensues. But like, again, with this shit, like he goes from, as soon as a child indicates that they want the money for something kind-hearted and sweet, he immediately flips a switch in his brain. He's like, I don't care about money. You can just have it. You can just have basically as much of it as you want. And that's cool. He's such a good guy. Okay. I've been gushing a whole bunch. And the only support that we have left at this point is the Niime support, which is a great support. And it'll segue nicely into Niime, because that's what we're talking about next. So, C support it's very funny. Their banter here is very funny. She says, I hope you have a good excuse for that stench of anima magic that you're surrounding yourself with. And then Hugh says, well, I became a mage. And then Niime says, am I finally losing my hearing? I thought I heard you say mage. I said I became an anima magic user. You pathetic idiot, and you dare show your face in front of me? Help! Murder! Idiot. She walks away. It's just really good. And then he was relieved that she didn't, attack him. Which is just so funny. The B support, she reveals that she is the one who gave him the Nosferatu tome that Ray stole, and she asks for it back since he's not using it anymore, seeing as he's an anima magic user. And he says, I don't have it. He tries to, come up with a story. I mean, it's not really a story. He says that, I gave it away to a kid. And then he tells the full story, and she's like, you didn't give it away. It was stolen by a child. And he's like, well, I mean, tomato, I guess. And then Niime says the point that I've been driving home as well, where she says, he's just like his father. He tries to be bad, but he can't deny his kind heart. Why couldn't he inherit his talent for dark magic as well? Which is funny. It's especially funny in the context of knowing FE7. Obviously, this support was written well before anything in FE7 was even thought of. But if you know FE7, you'll know that we do actually get to play as Hugh's father. He's a playable character in that game. His name is Kanas, and he is a dark magic user, and he nothing in any context of his character could be described as him trying to be bad. He is just a nice scholar who is really passionate about dark magic and thinks dark magic is really cool. So I don't know where that came from, but again, obviously it's clearly a retcon. And then the A support continues to be very funny, where Hugh asks Niime if his dad had talent for dark magic. She says yes, and he's like, well, that doesn't make any sense because I don't have a talent for dark magic. It never clicked with me. And he's like, wait a minute, I know what's up. I'm not your real grandson. And she like attacks him. She says, your kindness comes from your father, and your talent for anima magic comes from your mother. Your stupidity, that's probably from your grandfather, which is good. A good line there. And then they have a nice little heart-to-heart about how Hugh's parents died very young. And Hugh says, you must be disappointed that all you have left is a pathetic little grandson, eh, Nana? And she says, the strange thing is I'm not. I can't say how much I missed yelling at you while you were gone. Maybe they really are cuter when they're more troublesome. I certainly want you to live a long and fulfilling life, Hugh. And he seems touched by that, that's just so sweet. It's, again, one of those like rare, extremely characterful and extremely funny support. Like, maybe it's just my comedy type. There have been plenty of comedy supports where I'm like, this isn't funny at all. Like, I think Geese Garrett from last episode, perfect example. Well, then that one kind of made me chuckle a little bit. But like, Hugh Niime and Hugh Ray are like two of the funniest supports in the entire game, in my opinion. So yeah, I don't know. It's good. I think Hugh in this support, I mean, other than just being very funny, I think we can see how much he's internalized some of the treatment that he's gotten from Niime over the years. I mean, Niime, reportedly, if he is to be believed, Niime has treated him like shit his entire life. And I think that he's internalized that. He's like, she hates me, she thinks that I'm a disappointed. He's at the ready to run away from her, like, whenever he talks to her, basically, because he thinks that she's going to hurt him. And then in the A support, he seems kind of down on himself, not just at the end, but at the beginning, even when he's asking about like why he doesn't excel at dark magic. So I think this is one of the. I mean, Hugh always kind of lets his vulnerability show. And I think this is actually a good indication of maybe how he turned out the way he did. We get little bits and pieces of it, but like the fact that he was treated so harshly by Niime really turned him into the type of person that is willing to, do a good turn for a kid, because his life, the major adult in his life, the major adult figure treated him so badly that I think that he doesn't want to be that adult to another kid. He wants to be the type of person that kids feel like that they can trust, because he didn't feel that way growing up. And again, headcanon a clock here, but it's, I feel like that's a pretty easy read that you could come to. Yeah, I don't know. It's great. I love Hugh. Hugh is definitely, I'm gonna go ahead and spoil the end of the episode now and say that Hugh is definitely my favorite character, in the episode. Definitely up there for me in the game as well. I think that he is a very solidly in the running for my favorite character in the entire game. He's so good. The Niime side of things, I think, is a little bit worse. I mean, I think she's just funny, and I think she has a little bit of depth here with her kind of willingness to, be. She's not as harsh, and this maybe makes me think that Hugh is overblowing his case a little bit here, because she's not as mean to him as he, kind of based on his descriptors, it seems like she would be. I think you could maybe read the implication that she was so hard on him because she wanted him to develop an affinity for dark magic, and because he clearly is, that ship has long sailed, she has decided to just give up and kind of just treat him like a normal grandson. Maybe the other read I think you could have of it is that she was never really that bad in the first place, and maybe he just kind of like hyped her up in his own head a little bit too much, but unclear. Anyway, great support. All right. Next up, we have, and last on the docket for today, actually, we have Niime. We're making good time. We're blowing through this episode compared to the last one, which is crazy because, I mean, part of it is that I'm repeating a lot of the same supports as in previous episodes. But I think the other thing is, like, when I have a lot to say about a character, that I feel passionately about a character, the thoughts kind of just flow naturally and I'm able to get them out a lot faster. When I'm talking about characters like Shin and Sue, and Rutger, it's like drawing blood from a stone, and it takes me a lot longer to formulate my points and my ideas. I don't know. It seems like it'd be the other way around, right? Like, if I don't have much to say about a character, then why would the episode take so long? It's because I'm trying to pad out having nothing to say with, more bullshit. So, I don't know. I think this, I definitely prefer this. But anyway, we'll see how the rest of this episode goes. Anyway, Niime has 5 support partners: Hugh, Ray, Faye, Yoder, and Sophia. So the Niime Ray support I remember liking a lot, and this is another one of the reasons why Ray is up there as one of my favorite characters as well. She's just very creepy in this support. Like, this is a kid who is very clearly putting on an act. Again, I think I outlined this a lot in that episode, but he is very clearly not as bad as he claims to be, kind of like Hugh, right? This is maybe actually what I would imagine Canas to be like if whatever version of Canas they had in their head when writing FE6, I think it's kind of like Ray. That's kind of what I'm imagining. Because he is a very kind-hearted person, but he's trying so hard to not be, and to pretend like he doesn't care. And Niime, quite frankly, and Ray is not completely free of responsibility here because he does lean into it, but Niime is kind of taking advantage of the delusions of a 13-year-old boy, 12-year-old boy, to make him potentially into a husk, right? Because this is maybe something that we can't really be too harsh on her for, because at the time that this was written, the concept in FE7 of the other children that she has turning into mindless husks, that was not thought of yet. That comes up in like a Canas support that we get in that game. Clearly, they didn't have that in mind for her at this time. But with that context in mind, if we're allowed to kind of retroactively bring that in, she is taking Ray, who is a very vulnerable child, who says he wants this, but clearly isn't as committed to it as he might think he is, and she turns him into a dark magic disciple, and by the end, he seems willing to throw the whole planet out of whack to get more power. And I don't know, it's a little I'm not saying it makes her a bad character. I'm just saying it makes her an interesting one, I suppose. It's not every day we get a character that's so morally ambiguous, I suppose. Sorry, I didn't realize Niime was in Heroes. This is some nice art. Sophia support. If you remember Niime from the story, she is very interested in dragons. She's a big dragon fan. She wants to learn more about dragons. And Sophia gives her the opportunity to do so because she tells Niime about Arcadia and they talk a little bit about it. That's basically all there is. Niime kind of gives her a pep talk, and this is something I kind of glossed over when talking about Sophia, that maybe I shouldn't have. But there's a part in the A support where Niime says, if you were a normal girl, you could lead an ordinary life, not having people hunting you down for your power. And Sophia says, this is me. Even the dragon blood that flows in me, it is what makes me who I am. And Niime says that she's right, and that she's a strong person. And I don't know, I just think that's a nice moment for Sophia that I don't think I mentioned that in the Sophia episode. So better late than never, I suppose. But Niime doesn't really get a whole lot out of this one. Now, the face support is very funny. She's, like, nervous to talk to Faye because Faye's a real dragon, and she's kind of, like, off put by that. She stutters at first. She's not completely sure of herself. She runs away from Faye in the C support, just kind of making excuse and wandering off. I just think it's nice how she acts so out of character. I mean, out of character is maybe the wrong phrasing, but she acts a lot differently in that support compared to her other appearances. She's so sure of herself normally. I like this a lot because she says that she's afraid of the dragons. I mean, she's telling Niime the story of the dragons while framing it as being about demons. And she says that she's afraid of the demons, aka the dragons. But now that she's met Faye, she says that those fears are starting to go out the window. Which Faye doesn't really understand, but, Niime kind of brushes her off and says, oh, don't worry about it. She suggests that she was actually thinking about killing her, which is, she says, I was willing to do terrible things to an innocent little girl for the peace and safety of our race. What was I thinking? There's no point in peace obtained through such hideous means, which I think is a nice way to show that, like, even at her old age, she can still learn valuable life lessons, which is cool. I like that. All right, and then last for the day, we have the Niime and Yoder support. So I don't remember this. I seem to be misremembering, or maybe it's confirmed somewhere else, but I could have sworn that these two were like ex-lovers, and that's definitely the implication, but for some reason I remember it being like explicit, and I don't think that that's true. They definitely don't say it outright in the support. Apparently they got into some kind of fight. In the B support, it's revealed that there were some people, it's not made clear who. That's not really important. I think the point is kind of that it doesn't really matter. Some people killed Yoder's sister, and Yoder decided to not take revenge and instead forgive them and let them go on their way, which Niime got really upset about and said, you're just going to let them go? I mean, they could go do this again to somebody. Like, they're not, we should kill them so that they can't hurt any innocent people ever again. But Yoder refused, and that seems to be what ended their relationship, whatever that relationship was. And Yoder is still very clearly haunted by that. I mean, the B support is just him having a nightmare about it. In fact, not even a nightmare. He's closing his eyes and just like thinking about the past. And he says, I was remembering the past. If I just close my eyes, I can remember the past as if it were yesterday. And then the A support ends with them reconciling a little bit and saying that maybe, just maybe, it's not too late for them to connect their paths again. In the C support, it comes kind of full circle from the C support, where Niime says that their paths are completely gone. They're split forever, and they'll never cross again, because of how they ended that relationship 40 or 50 years ago. But by the end, in the C support, they say that, like, I can understand where you were coming from. Now that I've had more time to get older and gain more wisdom and reflect on where you were coming from, both of them understand where the other was coming from. They still don't agree, but they understand what the other was trying to do and the point they were trying to make. Both of them were kind of young and foolish back then, so they don't, they've come a long way in that time. And by the A support, Yoder is suggesting that maybe their paths can cross again a little bit, just at the end. But who knows? No one knows, is what he says. Good support. I actually really like this one. It's very understated, but I think it goes a long way to giving texture to both of their characters. Niime is a very well-rounded character. I don't think I like any of her supports as much as I like most of Hugh's. Obviously, the Hugh support notwithstanding, but I think all of her supports talk about a different facet of her character. For Rey, it's her fixation on dark magic. For Hugh, it's her connection with her family. For Sophia, it is her kind of her thoughts on. Okay, the Sophia one maybe is a little bit harder to quantify, but it's like, the whole point of that support is that being a part dragon is what makes Sophia who she is, and Niime understanding that sometimes it's better to accept yourself the way that you are rather than try to wish that some things were different. Kind of relevant to the whole Hugh situation, right? Like, she has this grandson who has a talent for anima magic. Instead of trying to make him into something he's not, maybe she should embrace who he is. And then the Faye support talks about her fear of dragons. The Yoder support talks about her past. I think all of these are like really interesting directions, and this is why hashtag bring back old characters in Fire Emblem. Don't do that hashtag. It's a too long. Hashtag elder Effie. No, that doesn't work. Hashtag justice for geriatrics. I don't know. There are not enough old people in Fire Emblem anymore. Take a look at Vander from the newest game. Take a look at him. What would you would say? Oh, yeah, he's an old guy, right? He's probably like 60, maybe 70. If we're at a stretch, he is 45 years old canonically. He is 45 years old, and he looks like a 60-year-old man. The warrior lady from, I forget her name. It's like Sapphire or something like that. From Brodia. She is like 35 or something. Like, she's so young, and yet they make these people look old. I think, what's his name? Lyndon? He's like 40. He's like 50 or something like that. He's these people, I don't know what the hell the character designers were thinking. I have to imagine that they were like made old, like designed with the intention of them being old. In fact, Lyndon's wife dies of old age, in that support that with Alir. And I guess they must have been designed and written to be that old, but then in like the official character ages, they're like, we can't make them be old because none of the cool kids will like old people. So we gotta make them young and hip and awesome. I don't know. That's the best that I could come up with. It's fucking stupid though. It's crazy. Anyway, this is why I went on a little bit of a deranged rant there. I'm sorry. But my point is that this is why older characters in Fire Emblem are awesome, because they're full of wisdom and experience. They are ripe with avenues to take their character. And I think it's very evident with Niime. It's very evident with Yoder. I think even Marcus to a certain extent, although that one is less so, for sure. But there just aren't that many old characters in Fire Emblem anymore. And to be fair, this isn't exactly a new trend. I don't think there are a lot of older Fire Emblem characters in most games. FE6 is probably up there as like one of the games that has the most. So I'm not going to pretend like this is a post-Awakening only problem, but it certainly hasn't really gotten any better recently, so I don't know. Okay, I think that's it. I am done. This episode actually isn't that much shorter than the last one, but I went on a long time about Hugh and Niime, so yeah, I think that's all that I have to say. Next time we're going to be looking at, I once again don't have the list in front of me, but I'm going to try to remember off the top of my head. We only have 2 episodes of characters left. We have like Bartray and his group of characters. That's going to be at the end because Corel is going to be a part of that one. The next one that we will be doing is, I think, Yoder, Saul, Elen. No, sorry. Yoder, Saul, Dorothy, and then fuck me. Okay, I think it might be Larum and Elfin. Yeah, Larum and Elfin, and then the final one, if I did my math right and I made sure to get everybody, then the final one is Bartray, Fur, Corel, Echidna, and Gonzalez. I think that's accurate. So, yeah, look forward to those. The first one will go out after the next main episode, and then the final one will go out between the final main episode and the wrap-up episode. So expect that kind of rough schedule over the next few weeks. I was hoping to get all of these. I was hoping to wrap up FE6 by the end of June, but clearly that's not going to happen. So I'm recording this on June 27th, and I'm hoping that I can actually be finished with... My goal right now is to get these episodes and the next main episode out before the end of June. But then after that, it might be another like month or so before I completely finish FE6. So I'm a little behind on the time frame that I wanted to get this done in, but that's all right. It's not the end of the world. Anyway, I think I've gone on long enough. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.